Alright, welcome back. Now we shall talk about some internal threats being faced by various organizations at various levels. Alright, the internal threats could be many. They could be different for different organizations. We shall club them under four different heads. What are these? The first is the organizational inefficiencies. Organization may have several inefficiencies, that is a weakness, a threat to the organization. Then the employees' shortcomings. The employees may have several shortcomings. Then the skill gaps. And then the outdated technology. These are the four major heads under which you can club all the internal weaknesses and threats of an organization. Let us try and understand them in detail. First, the organizational inefficiencies. Now, if you recollect, sometime in February 2014, the General Motors had a problem of ignition switch in one of their models. Now, this problem was not something very serious, and the engineers at General Motors, they knew about the problem for over a decade. They knew that such a problem is there. But the internal communication, the delays within the departments, the discussion among themselves, that delayed the decision of rectifying the problem until the problem aggravated so much that it came to people's notice. There was a big hue and cry among the public, and then General Motors had to recall about 1.5 million vehicles. Several lawsuits were filed against the company, and the company's reputation was damaged. Got it? Another similar case, sometime in 2019, Jaguar and Land Rover of Tata Motors, they had some problem in one of their models with the carbon dioxide emissions. But the leadership at various levels was very vigilant. They could detect the problem before it came to the public's notice or to the notice of the government agencies. They recalled about 44,000 vehicles, and when they recalled those vehicles for rectification, they provided the customers with alternate vehicles so that the customers don't face a difficulty. And very promptly they resolved the problem. Because they resolved the problem through a preemptive action and in such a nice manner, the company's reputation in fact benefited. The company's reputation improved a lot. So two similar cases. In the first case, the company's leadership was not vigilant, and therefore the company sustained huge financial losses and also a loss of reputation. In the second case, because the company's leadership was very vigilant, they could attend to the problem before it became a serious crisis, and as a result, not only they saved millions of dollars, but their reputation also improved. Try and understand that. Another thing is bureaucratic decision making. Decision making sometimes within an organization takes a long time. That is a threat. Nokia, for example, they had all the intentions to switch over from the normal phones to the smartphones. But the decision making within the company was so slow, was mired by the bureaucracy, the files moving up and down. And by the time they took the decision to switch over to the smartphones, Samsung and Apple had already dominated the market. And therefore, Nokia, despite being such a wonderful company, they could not establish themselves in the smartphones market just because of bureaucratic decision making. Then the resistance to change. Sometimes organizations have lot of resistance to change with time. For example, Kodak failed to change when the world was adapting digital photography. The world was shifting to digital photography, but Kodak, the organization within, had lot of resistance to change, and therefore they had, to face a miserable situation. They almost collapsed. Then there is something called as lack of innovation due to complacency. Try and understand this. It is not just the lack of innovation, but a lack of innovation due to complacency. For example, you see, when Netflix came into the market, Blockbuster was already an established name, an old company. But Netflix shunned the DVD culture and they innovated to video streaming. Now, Blockbuster could also have done it. If not before Netflix, then probably immediately or together with Netflix or immediately after Netflix, they also could have done it. But they did not do it because of their complacency. And therefore, while Netflix flourished, Blockbuster collapsed just because of their complacency. Then there is something called as inefficient supply chain management, a very, very important aspect of a company which could become a cause for success or failure. For example, when the Boeing launched their 787 Dreamliner, they outsourced too many components to too many vendors. And then it was a confusion, lack of coordination among the vendors, which ultimately resulted in a lot of delays and cost overrun. So despite being a wonderful plane, the company's financials took a big hit, and the company's reputation also suffered just because they could not manage the supply chain. There are other examples of organizational inefficiencies. For example, being overstaffed. You staff your organization with people more than what you require. Over dependence on manual labor. Things which can be done through automation, you do not get into automation but you continue doing it manually. That is inefficiency. Then wastage and pilferage of raw material. In most companies I have seen, raw material is either pilfered or it rots in the godowns. Then excessive or dead inventory. Inventory is money. If you keep it unutilized, if it is a dead inventory, it is a loss to the organization, a weakness. Then underutilized infrastructure and machines. In your quest for progress, you purchase lot of costly machines and then those machines remain underutilized. It is a threat to the organization. The list could be endless. And all these things, they could lead to mounting losses and business failure ultimately. So therefore, these are organizational inefficiencies, internal inefficiencies or internal weaknesses which are well within the control of the leadership. Then you have something called as employee shortcomings. Employees may have various shortcomings. The leadership is responsible to monitor that. For example, an improperly trained employee handling inflammables, and that led to a huge fire in the factory and it destroyed the whole factory just because that employee handling the inflammables was not properly trained. A software engineer, when he was fired from the organization because of some inefficiency, he took away the proprietary software code and sold it to a competitor. The leadership is responsible for not ensuring the safety and not laying down the proper procedure before a person is fired. An employee bypassed the firewall of an office computer. This person wanted to do some stock trading, so he bypassed the firewall, and as a result, because of his personal work, the entire network of the organization crashed. Virus seeped in and the entire network crashed just by a small mistake. Again, leadership is responsible for this. Then a purchase officer in one of the organizations, he took bribe and accepted faulty raw material in connivance with the quality control officer. The result was that the entire batch of the finished product had to be rejected. People did not notice the defective raw material, and the product, when it was almost completed, the whole batch had to be rejected just because the raw material was faulty. Then in one case, an overtired security guard. The security guard is supposed to work for 8 hours, but he was working at 2 different places for 16 hours a day. And obviously he was very tired. So at one of the places he fell asleep and some sensitive documents were stolen from the office. The leadership is responsible. They have to be vigilant to know what their employees are doing. The list again could be endless, and the leaders and department heads at various levels must be vigilant to guard against these shortcomings. Then there is something called as skill gaps. The skill gaps could be, the gaps for today, for tomorrow, or maybe for the near future. For simple things like, work which could be done by software or hardware that is being done manually. It is actually a skills gap. You're not having the skills or the people with the skill to do the job with the help of software or hardware. Your organization is using second generation software. Your competitor is using fourth generation software. So obviously your competitor has got an edge because of the skills gap in your organization. Then rejection of products by the customers. The customers are rejecting your product more and more. Why? Because the quality control department in your organization does not have skilled people or high-tech instruments to check the quality. Your company is doing well, but you are not checking the quality of the product which is going out. Because of the skills gap, you don't have people to check the quality of the product. As a result, your products are being rejected more and more by the customers. Your competitors are likely to introduce electronic vehicles in a few years. But you are clueless, your organization is clueless about it. When the time comes to change over to the electronic vehicles in future, your organization will not have the skilled people. There will be a skill gap in the future. So you have to be vigilant, you have to think about it now. These are some of the examples where the organizations may have skill gaps. As leaders, you have to identify those gaps and take adequate measures to fill them up. Then something called as outdated technology. Here there are two aspects. One thing is that either you are using outdated technology because you feel it is good within your organization, you are using outdated technology just because that technology you feel is good. The other thing could be that you are producing outdated technology because you feel that that technology is good. Now, both these things can lead to disaster and shutdown of your business. Let me try and explain to you the difference between these two, using outdated technology and producing outdated technology. You see, this car, if some of you remember, Premier Padmini, from 1964 to 2001, it was a wonderful car on the road. I have driven it personally. It was produced by Walchand Group factory in India. But what happened, these people, the factory, they did not upgrade the manufacturing plant. I have seen that plant also. It was a good plant, but with old machines. The vehicle was wonderful, but the plant was old. They continued producing vehicles with that old plant just because the vehicle was good. But despite the product being good, the factory had to shut down because the cost of production went up so steeply because they were all semi-automatic or manual machines, old machines. They took a lot of time to, do the work. As a result, the cost of production went up. Despite being a good vehicle, people could not afford it. So the plant had to shut down. Another case is, Nokia in India. Now, Nokia was using high-tech machines to produce an outdated technology, these mobile phones. The plant of Nokia was a high-tech plant, but they were producing product which was old technology. They kept on producing because the product was very good and they thought that people will continue the loyalty with that product. It did not happen. So this is a case where outdated technology was used to produce a good product, and here modern technology was used to produce a product which was outdated. Have you understood the difference? Either of these things may be happening or may happen in your organization. So as vigilant leaders, you must guard against this. So we have discussed some of the internal weaknesses and threats which all organizations face, and as vigilant leaders, you must guard against them. All these are within the control of the organization at various levels of leadership. Now in the next lesson we shall talk about something which is external to the organization.